The other point I want to mention is this program has invited a number of not-for-profits who have set up tables out in the lobby. So get an opportunity to go and see what they have to talk about in terms of what a lawyer does when your career is either over or in preparation for being. And with that, I'm going to introduce Andy Kaplan, who is going to introduce our first speaker.
It's my pleasure to welcome our first speaker of the day today, Keith Lawrence. Keith had a successful business career at Procter & Gamble of 30 plus years and then retired, but he calls it graduated from P&G and went on to the next phase of his life, his encore career. And in his encore career, one of the things he does is to coach people about retirement. He is a certified retirement coach. I've had a chance to see Keith speak on a number of occasions and was very impressed with him, his ideas, his insight. He gave me so many things to think about, and his emphasis on putting together a plan for retirement. He's also written a book. It's called Your Retirement Quest. It's also a great sort of handbook for retirement and a practical way to get you to focus and do some exercises toward working on a plan. So I don't want to take another minute of Keith's time. Please join me in welcoming Keith.
Good. Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. As Cliff said, I appreciate that you're here, and I've been asked a very simple task to take 30 years of learning on this whole topic of retirement and do it in 29 minutes or less. So you ready to go? All right. Well, first of all, this group is in great company. There are 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single day in the United States for the next 21 years. So I'm going to ask you a question. Based on all the research, what's the probability on average of those individuals having a fulfilling retirement? Anyone want to take an educated guess? Andy's told me this is the smartest group I will ever present to, so this should be an easy exercise for you. Anybody want to guess?
30%.
30%. Well, pretty close, but it's about 50%. And I don't know about you, how many of you have worked 30, 40, 50 years of your life to have the rest of your life be in a flip of a coin, whether or not it's fulfilling or not? So we're here to share with you some secrets, some insights about what it takes to make sure that you're not one of those half of people that struggle with this stage of life. I got some bad news for you too. There are some occupations that are at the greatest risk of failing retirement. Those occupations typically have their personal identity, their self-worth, their schedule, who they are, tied up in their work. And when their work goes away, those individuals struggle. So anyone want to guess at the top of the list what occupation might be? Now, lawyers are among the top 5. I've got bad news for you. But doctors are at the top of the list, all right? Dentists are number 2, small business owners number 3, and guess where lawyers stand on the list? Number 4. So the fact that you are here is a great investment of your time to make sure that, again, you're not going to be one of those ones struggling with this phase of life. I spent 32 years at Procter & Gamble, interestingly enough, 20 years in the building right next door to us. If someone had asked me to ever be back in the Sycamore building presenting to a bunch of lawyers, I would have said, hell no, I'm going to retire. But here we are today, all right? But the reason why I got started on this with my co-author many decades ago is we had people on average retire with at least $1 million of savings that within 6 months they'd be wandering the hallways wanting their job back. And I would go, why are you back here? We're all trying to escape. And it was 2 questions. I was bored, or 2 responses. I was bored, or I got kicked out of the house. And so I saw that, and with my co-author, Alan, another P&G alumnus, we ended up starting this study of what it takes to have a great, fulfilling retirement. So we've been on this quest for a long, long time. We've interviewed thousands of people. I was in Columbus last night giving a workshop for 25 couples. Always a fun experience to do that with significant others in the room, as you might imagine. All right? And we ended up writing this book, which we never thought would be an Amazon 1% bestseller ever since it was launched 9 years ago. And that's no small feat. Given there's 7 million books on Amazon. But again, our primary objective is to take that learning and do through workshops. We're doing a very abbreviated version of that today. As Andy also mentioned, I do a lot of one-to-one coaching as one of the country's certified retirement coaches too. So if anybody wants to chat that afterwards, feel free to do that. So, but our mission is really simple. How do you take, hopefully, the rest of your life so it's the best of your life? Because it can be, particularly if you plan for it. So what I'm going to do here in the next 25 minutes is a couple of things. I want to share with you some of the challenges, not to scare you about retirement, but make sure you recognize it is no easy transition. I want to cover 5 myths of retirement, and then we're going to talk about some of the keys, the things that you really should keep in mind as you prepare for the next journey in life. Here's our bottom line premise. When you talk to most people, and if I had a chance to interview all of you, I'm sure many of you would be excited about what might be next, spending time with triplet grandkids, as Andy is recently enjoying, okay? But on the other hand, many are anxious about, am I going to have enough money? What am I going to do with my time? Does my significant other want me around more often, etc.? If they've done any kind of planning, it's typically on the financial side. But very, very few people even do that. I'm sure you as lawyers probably see that. Estate plans, financial plans, it's about 1 out of 3 baby boomers have those in order. Our premise is pretty simple. If you not only plan the financials, but create what we're calling a life plan, you will dramatically increase the odds of having a fulfilling retirement. And the way we measure that is very simple. If I had a chance to come interview you, and I asked you, are you retiring from something or to something? If you can answer that question about to something with a great level of detail, all right, then you probably got a good feeling what your life plan might look like for retirement. If it's just to play golf every day, trust me, this novelty wears off very quickly. All right? There's a reason why some of the retirement communities in Naples, Florida, and elsewhere in Florida have among the highest alcoholism rates in the country, because they believe that this is going to be their great retirement, and it doesn't always turn out that way. So what are some of the challenges that we face, right? Again, retirement can be wonderful, but there are some major challenges because this is a huge transition that we all go through. So on average, again, if you look at the actuarial statistics, we're going to live about a decade longer than our parents. And again, these are all averages. It's called the bonus decade. But that prevents some challenges to it. One is finances. How do I finance my lifestyle to 95 or 100, which is what most financial planners are using these days? But then also, what happens? I know many people in their 90s are experiencing with their friends, their family members, their spouses are no longer around and experience loneliness. If you question this, walk in any McDonald's at 7 o'clock in the morning, and what do you see? Right? Many elderly gentlemen there because they're lonely and want some place to show up and hopefully have somebody smile at them. Another challenge is family dynamics. It's amazing, again, even in this group last night, I asked every couple, I said, how many of you have some issues about spending more time with your spouse in retirement? At least one person in every couple group was brave enough to raise their hand. All right? So this is a challenging dynamic. There's a famous saying, particularly among spouses, I married him or her for sickness and health, but not for lunch every day. All right? So you need to take that into account, and we'll be talking that a little bit more later. And then the freedom of more time. If you've been working 60, 70, 80 hours a week at your job, what happens when you've got all that period of time? What are you going to go do with it? And again, it's not just about playing and filling golf every day. I have spent time interviewing folks in the nicest places on earth, jogging the beaches of Florida, in Hawaii, go down through the list, and deep down they go, you know, I wonder about after the first 6 to 12 months of doing this, is this all there is? Is this all I'm going to do for the next 20, 30 years of my life? And you can just see it in their face. And this is when the disenchantment of retirement fits in. There's an initial honeymoon stage where people feel great about this, but then is like, is this all there is? There's some telltale signs of disenchantment. You start showing back up at work. I work with a lot of small business owners in Cincinnati. It's amazing how many of them in their 80s and 90s still show up for work every day. And it's like, why are you here? And they admit, I got no place else to go, all right, or I have nothing else to do. And so is that going to be you at some point in time? And then that's when some of the risk factors or bad habits set in. Let me ask you a quick question. What's the average number of hours retirees watch television a week? Anyone want to guess?
20.
20. I want to double that plus. 49 hours of TV a week. I've had retirees talk about when I retired. In fact, this person stood up in a workshop recently. I built an addition on my home, a porch. I bought the biggest Samsung TV that's ever been made, and I sit and watch Fox News all day long. And his wife was sitting there rolling her eyes, all right? So again, many people, since they are bored, they haven't planned out their life, they don't know what to do, they end up doing some of these bad habits. I'm not against watching some TV, but as you might admit, that's not a healthy habit. There's a reason why Dr. Oz says the two most dangerous years of your life are the year you retire and the year you're born. And so it's really important to kind of think through this phase of life so you don't experience one of those challenges. So now that you're thoroughly depressed about retirement, that's not my intent. My intent is just to share with you the facts that these are major transition points beyond just finances that you need to think through. So I want to quickly cover the 5 myths of retirement. First is that retirement is easy. Just so we're clear, retirement is phenomenal, particularly if you plan for it, all right? But it is not easy. Everything changes. Your schedule, your sense of self-worth, your opportunity to learn and grow, how much time you spend with others, et cetera, et cetera. Most people spend time focusing on all the bad stuff about work. They forget that hopefully there's some good things that you get out of your work, meeting your clients' needs, satisfaction, et cetera. So it is not easy. Second myth is, I'll figure it out all later. People see me as the retirement guy. I go into companies and they go, oh my gosh, just leave me alone. Let me finish my work and then I'll figure this out after I take a break in retirement. The sad reality of it is they don't figure it out. And that's when they start the bad habits that we talked about. Third myth is, I'll figure it out by myself. And I'll give you another quick question. What sex is particularly guilty of this? I know I'm going to upset the majority of the room here with this answer. All right? Again, if you're in a married relationship with a significant other, right, it's typically men that, again, are not willing to have the crucial conversations. So if I had either your spouse or your family here today, and I asked them, and I asked you, tell me about your retirement plan. Who's going to retire first? Where are you going to live? What are you going to do? Are you going to downsize or not, et cetera? How many of you could honestly say that you would have an aligned to plan for your vision for your retirement? It's about 1 out of 5. All right? So again, this is a huge opportunity to have some of these crucial conversations. Another very sad but true statistic is the fastest growing divorce rate in our country today are couples over the age of 55. And I've interviewed and spent a lot of time talking with them, and it's for a whole bunch of reasons that's true, but this is not a good stage of life to have to go through this. Okay? And then the last myth is that, number 4 means not working. There's this paradigm that, again, once I'm done as a lawyer, I'm going to hang up my, well, it's not, you don't have a hat, do you? A cloak? Or what's the appropriate analogy for it?
Briefcase.
A briefcase, okay, there you go. All right, hang up your briefcase and never do it again. And I'm not suggesting you to do the same thing in retirement, but again, there's a lot of things we get out of, quote unquote, doing something to use your knowledge and skills and your passions to help others. A sense of self-worth, accomplishment, growth, and I have countless stories of people that have totally reinvented themselves. All right, I know a person I used to work at P&G, was an engineer. He wanted to help youth in the, caught up in the legal system here in Cincinnati, so he went and got a law degree, and he's loving it. All right, many examples of that. So don't discount that you might not work. And the last thing very quickly here on the myth side is that money equals happiness. My guess is this is not an issue for the majority of you. 3/4 of baby boomers are going to rely only on Social Security for their money in retirement. Okay? And the average check is $1,400 a month. All right? So again, money is important. You need to have a good financial plan, but if it's just about the money, I think you'll be sadly disappointed. We have people in our book that are worth $100 million here in Cincinnati and are frankly very miserable in retirement. It's a lot more to it than just the money. I'm going to suggest, if again, take a key point out of this, is you're going to run out of meaning before you run out of money. What's the meaning, the next meaning in this stage of life for you? So those are some of the challenges. Those are the myths. I'm going to talk about the 4 keys. If only I have time for 4. There are 10 of them that are covered in our book. But in the spirit of time, I thought through which is the 4 that I would highlight, again, to think about and potentially spend some more time studying as you leave the room today. First one is, again, a sense of life purpose. When I talk to most people about who they are, most people quote a role. I'm a proud grandparent. I'm a husband. I'm a wife. I'm a great lawyer. I'm a executive at Procter & Gamble. Go down through your list. But when that role goes away, if that's how they define their purpose, what happens to them? It's amazing how many mothers come up to me. I was just in Omaha last week. I had 3 of them come up during the break and they go, our kids are going back to school. My life is over. What do I do? It's like your life is not over, but they don't have clarity of purpose. So again, having a short statement that is kind of guides you, that describes who you are and what are you going to do with the rest of your life is critically important. If you're like most people, you don't know what that is. Very few people have that clarity. But I'm going to give you a simple question to ponder in your car tonight when you're stuck on I-71 going home. If you are someday 90 years old and your grandkids or nieces or nephews snuggle up in your lap and they asked you, what was your life all about? How would you answer that in a sentence they would understand? My guess is many of you would not say, I was one of Cincinnati's very best lawyers. That's something to be very proud of, but I guess that's probably not how you would answer that question. Right? So, but if you can answer that question, it will give you a sense of purpose that will help guide you in what you might want to do with the rest of your life. So that's one secret, one key. Second one is sense of attitude. And I'm sure you probably know people like this or whatever. How many of you, by the way, show of hands, want to live a long life going into retirement? No, the rest of you want to die early? Okay, that's up to you, all right? But if you want to have a long life moving forward based on all the research, hopefully none of you smoke 12 years off your life. Guess what's number 2 on the list? Ahead of nutrition, exercise, all the other things that you hear about in the media? Having a positive attitude. 7 years on your life. And so how I'm going to measure that, again, if I had a chance to come interview you and the people that know you the best, I would ask them this little question from the movie Winnie the Pooh. Anybody recognize these 2 characters? Who's the person on the left? It's Eeyore. What's Eeyore famous for? Being down, negative, cloud over their head, etc. Person on the right, Tigger, upbeat, positive, etc. Person that we're thinking about that's going to have a great retirement. If I went and asked your friends, your spouse, your children, which are you, what would they say? Hopefully, it's a Tigger. And if not, I'd work on it. There's a reason why there's a negative stereotype, I saw it again last night in Columbus, about angry old men. All right? Hopefully you're not going to become one of those. Connectedness is the third secret I want to talk about here briefly. And this is not about the number of friends you have on Facebook, or how many people you have in your Rolodex, all right? This is about people that are going to be there in your life. And this is a huge issue as people get older for a whole bunch of reasons, particularly for men. The Gallup organization recently asked, how many close friends do you have? The answer in America was, on average, 1.5. Right? And what the issue here is that if you don't have a sense of connection, is that this is where you get into the feeling lonely, I'm by myself, et cetera, and in many cases, there's a reason why our suicide rate is the highest among men over the age of 70 in our country. I thought it was young people. It is not. It's they feel lonely, they maybe have an health issue, there's no one there, et cetera, and unfortunately that happens. So the question we're going to ask you if we have more time is, how many 2 o'clock in the morning friends do you have? People that you could call at 2 o'clock in the morning and would be there for you. No questions asked. Now I always get the question, do family count? If they'd answer your phone, the answer is yes. All right? But if I had a chance to, if you had time to write down how many 2 o'clock in the morning friends might you have, how many of you could say the minimum, which is 7? Okay? This is one of my 2 o'clock in the morning friends. These are all my high school mates that we spend a lot of time together. All right? So if you don't have 7 2 o'clock in the morning friends, I would encourage you, you might want to spend some more time. And oh, by the way, despite how important you think at your firm, you will become a distant memory on your last day of work. All right? And whether we all want to face that or not, that was true for me, that was true for many of our executives next door at P&G, et cetera. Many of those are outlined in our book. So that's the third key. And then the fourth one I'll cover very briefly is giving back. And the reason why I highlighted this, many people think retirement is all about, I'm just going to do now what I want to do. I'm going to travel the world, I'm going to lay on the beach, I'm going to do whatever, I'm just going to enjoy life. And that is important, and I would highly encourage you doing that. But the people that are truly on fire, living to their full potential in retirement, is they have decided to take some of their knowledge and skills and passions and decided to make the world a better place. And whatever that might be for them. Most baby boomers, when they talk about, are you going to volunteer retirement? Of course I am. I'm going to do that. Sadly, the statistics are pretty overwhelming. Very, very few people do. And they lose out, and the people that they could potentially help could lose out. So again, I would encourage you to think about, again, we're not suggesting full-time work or full-time, but serving on boards, helping others, your church, whatever. And it can be even crazy things. So I'm going to end with this one little story here. It was a group of men, some of them lawyers, I understand. In Salt Lake City, they used to, for years, get together on Saturday morning in this coffee shop, and they'd sit around and talking about the good old days. And the owner of the coffee shop got so upset last year, he said, I am sick and tired of hearing your old stories every Saturday morning. Why don't you go across the street? He kind of gave it as a joke, a challenge. There's a farmer's market. Why don't you go set up a booth over there? And maybe they might be interested in hearing your stories. Well, believe it or not, they did. It's called the Old Coots Booth. And interestingly enough, there are lines of people showing up to sit and talk to these gentlemen about life in general. All right? And do you think they're getting some fun out of that? And my guess is the people that are showing up too are having some fun out of it. So you could have that as old lawyers giving advice? No? All right. So with that, I'm going to end with the powerful 4 questions on when it's the right time to retire. These are pretty straightforward. They're yeses and nos. And when you get yes to most of them, you might want to be thinking heavily about retiring from what you're doing today and potentially thinking about what's next in your life. So here are the 4 questions about when it's the right time to retire. The first one is, do I have enough? Hopefully you all have a financial advisor that's helping you think through this complicated topic, and they're maybe able to come back and say, hey, based on the lifestyle that you want to have in retirement, you do have enough. You're okay. You're able to go. If they're saying it's okay and you just say have another $1 million, I would encourage you to pause and think about, do you have your priorities in the right place? It pains me to no end when I meet with business leaders, which I did here this week in Cincinnati, not far from this building, where by all stretch of the imagination is incredibly wealthy and recently diagnosed with cancer. And the conversation was, if only I had. You don't want to be in that spot. Second is, have I had enough? You've had a great career or whatever law firm, but it's like it's not as exciting anymore winning that latest case or tackling that next item. And if the answer to that is no, you haven't had enough, you're still enjoying your work, that's great. 25% of the people work till they die. What pains me to no end is when I go meet with them and they're there and they're miserable, but they're still working because they don't know what to do, they're scared, nobody wants them around, etc. So, have you had enough? Those are 2 questions. The 2 most important questions are the next ones, though. Do you have enough to do? Can you sit down honestly and tell a portfolio of things that you want to do for the next 20 to 30 years of your life? All right? And if not, this is the time to start thinking about what that might be. And then last but not least is, do you have somebody around at home or friends and family that want to spend more time with you? And if you're not sure about that, I'd encourage you to have some conversations coming out of today. All right? So if you've got 4 yeses, this is your chance. You can stand up now and basically say, I'm out of here. All right. So, as I mentioned, those that understand the challenges, embrace the 10 keys, break through the myths, really do a phenomenal job in retirement. And I'm confident that you could do that too if you choose to embrace and spend the time, which you already are by being here today. So again, I've covered a lot in a very, very short period of time. I just highlight there's a lot more resources available. As Andy mentioned, there's the book called Your Retirement Quest on Amazon. We have a website, Facebook page. We do individual coaching, etc. So more than welcome to take advantage of that. I'll be here all morning into the afternoon. So if you want to grab me outside, if you have any specific questions, be more than glad to do that. So I'm just going to encourage you to hopefully chat with one another about this topic, about maybe something that you learned from today. And I'm going to encourage you to go do something coming out of today, because if you don't, we're going to send this little guy after you. All right. So I will turn it back to Andy. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope this is helpful.
I'm really trusting you all. I've never had this many wires attached to me before. So we're going to make the best of it here. I really enjoyed the former presentation. I think probably because it's a good part of my presentation as well. But I'm going to go a little deeper with you. The emotional aspects of retiring. We are, as a society, particularly since 1935, when we came out with the Social Security, and we thought the myth was we're going to have this wonderful American experience in which we will live happily ever after. It takes a lot of planning to live happily ever after. You all have been looking at the financial aspects of it. You've been looking at the what do I do with myself aspects of it. I'm going to just take a few minutes to say, what do you do with you when you retire? As a society, we've put a lot of pressure on people to identify with what they do. What's the first thing you say at a cocktail party? Hi, I am. What do you do? Now that you're thinking of retirement, what's one of the first questions people ask you? What are you going to do in retirement? We're tremendously focused around this. What are we going to do? What have we done? My question as a therapist to you is more, who are you in retirement? What do you want to be in retirement? We are, after all, human beings, not just human doings. I think one of my favorite starting points for this, I'm a great admirer of General Schwarzkopf, who said, I say to armies, go, and they go, and I say to armies, come, and they come, and I say to my grandchildren, don't jump on the couch, and they go, who are you talking to, old man? So there is a transition that happens here in who we are, and that transition is away from a role, not who we are, but the role that we've played. I'd like to talk a little bit about how a transition is a loss, and we've all experienced losses in our lives. And losing who we are. Which one?
It's on your...
This one. Okay, better? You know what, I'm gonna...
Yeah, that's the
This
microphone.
one?
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, better? Better, okay, sorry. A transition always involves a loss. We can look at what we're leaving. It also involves a new beginning. We can look at where we're going. What is it we're looking forward to? I think one of the best places to start with a transition is to realize we are going into another life stage. Psychologists love to make life stages. Freud had them, Erickson had them, Jung rearranged them, Erickson really went to town. We seem to stop when it gets to adulthood. We don't talk about the last stage of human development, and we're heading into the last stage of human development. We are at the last stage of adult life processing. How are we going to do that? One of the starting places is to look at yourself and write a life review. Where have you been? What's been important to you? What would you like to have done? I'm going to copy from the first speaker and say, what is it you would tell people about yourself? I once taught a class in which I had 200 students, and I asked each of them to interview their oldest person they knew in their family, or if not their family, someone that they knew. And so I had 200 life stories to review. And it was fascinating to me what came out of those 200 life stories. Out of 200 life stories, 198 people would not change their life. And these stories ranged from granddaughters of slaves, military backgrounds, hills and hollers, very affluent backgrounds. Still can't hear? Sorry. I'm going to just hold it. Is that better?
Hold it in your hand, that might be better.
Okay. So start with a life review. Jung once said that we're born an empty stage, and then when we start this life journey, we start putting on masks. What we're supposed to do, what people expect of us, and we keep adding these masks as we go through life. And we get to this point in our life when we realize, I'm not real sure who's still behind this mask. And the journey becomes in adulthood now to get rid of those masks one at a time and find out just who we are, who's under there, what is it we, really wanted to do, what are we tethered to. And who is under that mask. Once we have an idea of where we've been, and if we're honest with ourselves and can see what is it I need to attend to before I can live happily ever after, we're looking at the emotional side or the mental health side of our lives. If we're going into retirement, now's the time to look at things like, what happened to me when I felt just a little depressed? Am I going to go into retirement and depression's going to go away? Or do I want to do something about addressing that depression now? What's happened to me mental health-wise in terms of addictions, anxieties? Now's the time to address those. They're not going to go away in retirement. You've heard statistics about suicide in retirement. I think maybe one of the sad ones is George Eastman. Certainly had quite an exciting life. Committed suicide 2 months after he retired and left the note that said, "I've done everything, why wait?" What is it you want to wait for in your life? What is it you haven't done? Take a look at that. Cognitive issues, I think, are another thing to face when we look at retirement. We have this idea that things should come as quick as we always have, particularly those of you that are litigators have worked pretty fast, pretty quick, processed. What happens is we don't forget that. It's not that we lose it, it's that our processing speed slows down. It takes us a little bit longer to retrieve. Doesn't mean, still louder. I always wanted to be a geriatrician, and I couldn't be a geriatrician because nobody older could hear me. So I will try a little harder. That processing speed slows down. We can't pull that information out right away. So the next thing that happens is we panic. It's still there. It's still usable. It's still part of who we are. How do I know what's pathological and what is just anxiety or what is the slower processing speed? If you're concerned, there are tests that we can look at. We have a simple axiom in our work, which is when you can't remember where you put your car keys, that's old age. But when you can't remember what your car keys do, that's a clinical issue. And that clinical issue may be easily resolved. It's not always a gone forever issue. You know, there are medications, there are exercises, mind exercises you can do. So don't hide it in a closet and not do something about it. Is that my husband? I'm telling him where I was. Okay, take care of the issues prior to going into retirement. I like the idea of coaching, you know, either with a therapist or with a life coach or with a retirement coach. And I would urge you to seek one out and bounce off and find out not what it is you want to do, but who you want to be. Last thing I want to touch on, because I think it comes squarely under the emotional issues, and that is marriage, for better, for worse, if not for lunch. Robert Browning certainly was very poetic when he said, the best is yet to be, but the good news or the bad news about that is you have to make that the best there is to be. Coming home in retirement, one of the first things I think one has to take a look at is how you can fit into your wife's busy schedule. If both partners are retiring, I would urge you not to retire at the same time. Retiring requires a lot of support from a spouse. And two people facing this at the same time can be a difficult take. Communication is important with the spouse when you come home, reorganizing what the jobs are in the home, who makes decisions in the home, and finding a way to share those decisions can keep you out of that majority that says, hey, the highest divorce rate is after retirement. Okay. How many of you are retired now? Okay. What would you add to that? How is it for you to go home? I'm looking at Joe because I know his name. And his wife. What was it like for you to go home?
Well, in my case, because my wife is already retired, it was actually quite nice.
Okay.
She likes having me for lunch.
So you had already, she had already retired, so you hadn't
Yes.
tried to do this together. Okay. And back there? What was it like for you?
Great.
Good.
Went home and went and sat on my boat.
And sat on my boat. That sounds good. I'll join you for cocktails, huh? These are considerations. Retirement is an idiosyncratic thing. You know, it's what you make of it. It's how much you want to put into it. It's how honest you want to be with yourself. You know, I'm sort of reminded of the patient that asked her doctor, you know, after surgery, will I be able to play the piano? And the doctor said, of course you will. Retirement's not going to solve all of your issues. If you weren't getting along before retirement, if it was a fuzzy relationship before you retired, it's going to be difficult. If the relationship was solid before, together, you find the best years of your life. The last issue that I'd kind of like to step on a little is the spiritual development in this last stage of aging. Spiritual development, what are my values? What are my morals? What do I want to leave behind? For some people it may be, do I have a religion? Do I believe in the religion? Do I believe in a higher power? This is the time you've had to read and think about that and sort of search your own soul. You're not being anyone until you know who you are, and you get to decide that yourself. Questions? Comments? I urge you to go home and write your self-review and say, what is it I need to take care of before I step into retirement? Retirement also is a lot like divorce. How you feel about it may depend on whose idea it was. You know, yours, or you being forced to retire. Those are issues to deal with prior to going into retirement. Good luck. I'm not retired.
Together, and I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Erin Childs. She's also an attorney, and she runs for the Partnership of Ohio. And she's the executive director. And Erin and I actually served together on the Cincinnati Bar Foundation and for a number of years when she was president of Young Lawyers. And before taking the job at Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio, she was with Thompson Hines. So she has experience as a practicing attorney as well as being active and volunteering. And so I'm going to give it to Erin.
Fantastic, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? I will try to keep this up very close. Please give me a wave in the back if for some reason that you can't. Before I get started, how many of you are familiar with Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio? Great, some of you. So I'll give a quick overview about what we do, and then I brought one of our very favorite volunteers, Jim Lawrence here, who is recently retired, and I'm putting it in air quotes because like many attorneys who retire, they never really retire, and once the rest of society recognizes that you all have a little bit more time on your plate, we have many opportunities to fill it. So that's why I was asked here today to talk a little bit about Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio, and how we make it easy for attorneys to jump in and volunteer in their area of expertise. I also brought a little bit of information on the new emeritus rule from the Ohio Supreme Court, and also did a little bit of research to see what other organizations here in Cincinnati support the emeritus role. So before I go into all that, I have this video that one of our very favorite P&G attorneys put together for us talking about our volunteers.
I know someone who wants to change the world.
I know someone who wants to change the world.
Right here in Cincinnati.
Right here in Dayton.
He has so many ideas he wants to put into action.
Like right now. No big salary.
No safety net.
Just a shoestring budget and a dream.
To help the less fortunate.
To feed and shelter.
To protect the most vulnerable.
To teach and grow.
To offer hope and opportunity.
To solve the big problems.
one person at a time.
One child at a time.
He isn't afraid of failure.
She isn't afraid to get her hands dirty.
But she might be afraid of improperly classifying employees under wage and hour laws.
Let's just say he's not that passionate about drafting licensing agreements. But filing for a trademark? That's my thing.
Intellectual property. Yeah, I know something about that.
But document retention and destruction, that's my passion.
But reading fine prints and tiny fonts, that's my passion.
Running a nonprofit, he faces so many problems.
The legal ones, I can solve.
Our community needs her.
And she needs me.
I know somebody who's going to change the world.
I know someone who's already out there changing the world.
And I helped make it happen.
And I helped make it happen.
And I helped make it happen.
So for those of you that hadn't heard of Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio, that's okay. We have not even been here for 5 years. We are the third Pro Bono partnership nationally, and it is our mission to strengthen our community by providing community-based nonprofits with free business legal services tailored to their individual needs. The original Pro Bono partnership was started in New York about 22 years ago. Then one opened in Atlanta in 2005. And back in 2014 is when we opened our doors. Many of you who have been active in the bar will know Breck Weigel, former Bar Association president. I'm going to stand over here, really far away from there. Breck was in New York on business with GE Aviation, and he heard firsthand about the work that Pro Bono Partnership was doing in New York. Our focus is on engaging corporate transactional attorneys to volunteer in their area of expertise. And as a former bar president who said he would see everyone he knew walking to and from the courtroom, he is now out at GE Aviation looking out on beautiful I-75. So he was looking for a way to re-engage with the community. He loved the idea of Pro Bono Partnership, and he reached out to general counsels all over the city of Cincinnati to let them know about what Pro Bono Partnership did and to see if they were interested in helping bring it to Cincinnati. And much to his surprise, we had total buy-in from the large companies here in Cincinnati. Not only did they want to volunteer and engage their attorneys, but they wanted to pledge 3-year financial commitments to Pro Bono Partnership. And then from there, they reached out to law firms who are just as important to us in terms of volunteers and community partners. They convened nonprofits in the area and said, hey, this is what they're doing in New York and Atlanta. Is that something that we need here in Cincinnati? And the answer was a resounding yes. Many of you I know serve on nonprofit boards, so you've done a lot of free legal work for nonprofits that you've been on. Those are the lucky nonprofits. Many other nonprofits rely on the friend of someone who's on the board. The #1 law firm for our clients prior to becoming a Pro Bono Partnership client is Google, which Google has a lot of good information, but especially for someone with no legal background, it is hard for them to understand many of the intricacies of business law that they need to know in order to stay viable. So this is the slide of our 2018 corporate supporters, and I show this not just to show you where we're getting our support, but this is where we get our volunteers from. In less than 5 years, we've had over 600 attorneys in Cincinnati and now Dayton jump in and take a project with us or volunteer at one of our clinics. Everything we do is transactional. There are many organizations out there, and VLP, if you're a litigator, please volunteer with them. I know they have great projects, but for those of you that don't enjoy going to court, that never went to court, that have spent your career advising businesses on corporate matters, you're who we need. We are always in need of more attorneys to help us with all of these projects and more. I volunteer for VLP, and sometimes in between my cases, I'll have a couple months where there's nothing to do. We have lots of projects that take short periods of time. If you want to jump in and review a simple contract or draft a waiver, it's really our job to make it easy for you to do so. So how it works is we ensure a maximum impact of your time by carefully screening our nonprofit clients, and we're with you from beginning to end. All of our nonprofits fill out a request for legal assistance We do a very deep dive into the organizations. We look at their programming, we look at their 990s, we look at who's on their board. We ask them what attorneys they've worked with in the past, whether it's been pro bono or for a fee. And if they've been paying attorneys, they will not qualify for a client as a client unless something's changed. How you learn about the projects with us is to fill out a very simple form. I brought some basic information with me, and we send out an email once a month. We call it our monthly volunteer opportunities. And on that email, it looks similar to how it appears on our website. We list different areas of corporate law, and then if you scroll down to the area that you feel comfortable with, there will be the name of the nonprofit, a sentence or two about their mission, a link to their website if they have one, and then the exact legal work that they're looking for. Besides myself, we have 2 other attorneys on staff, and we spend a lot of time with our clients trying to help them understand what it is going on and what they need. We have some clients that are extremely sophisticated. I mean, Pro Kids out there is one of our favorite clients. They are run by attorneys. They have many attorneys that volunteer with them. They know exactly what they need. They just need someone to help them do that. But a lot of our other clients, and Jim Lawrence will testify to this, they just need someone to walk them through something, to explain something, to, they may think they need one thing, but what they actually need is something else over here. They think this is a problem, and actually this is a bigger problem over here. All those same things I know you encounter in your daily practice. It's the same with nonprofits, only they have much, much smaller budgets, and they're all mission-based, trying to make Cincinnati a better place. So not every nonprofit qualifies for our services. They have to be an established 501c3. We do not incorporate new nonprofits. We only work with ones that are on the ground doing good work. Most of our clients are people-focused. They are found in every pocket of our community on the ground, making a difference for those that need it the most. Right now we're in Cincinnati and Dayton. We're not in Northern Kentucky, so Ohio is where our focus is right now. And that last one is what I spoke to earlier. They have to demonstrate that they're unable to pay for legal services. So who do we impact? I'm sorry for this workaround. Each one of our clients, and we have now 200 clients, I think we just accepted our 202nd client this week, are better than the next. So we've profiled a few of them, but if you ever want to go to coffee, I can sit there and tell you about all these amazing clients.
Sweet Cheeks Diaper Bank started in October of 2015, and we work through partner agencies to get free diapers to families in need while raising awareness of the basic health need for diapers in our community. We are currently distributing 100,000 diapers a month to 34 partner agencies around Greater Cincinnati, and that takes over 200 hours of volunteer help each month to make happen. So our volunteers come in every week, groups of them from schools, churches, businesses, and they wrap our diapers and repackage them, and then they fill the orders for our partner agencies and help us get them out the door. Our partnership with Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio has been invaluable. It's really given us the confidence to operate as a business, a nonprofit business. It has made us feel comfortable going out, forming partnerships with other organizations, knowing that we're protected, our brand is protected, our employees, our volunteers are protected, and that we have everything in place to be successful and to continue to grow. It's surprising to me that something like this doesn't exist everywhere. I can't imagine how we actually would be operating, how we would have grown, how we would have afforded all the things that we've gone through Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio for.
Megan was a full-time working mom when she was home on maternity leave and was reading an article while she was holding her newborn baby, hormones coursing through her body, and she read about what a huge diaper need there was in the city of Cincinnati and how out of her garage, and they just moved into this huge 20,000 square foot warehouse. They now have several employees. Their partnership agencies, even since they've done this video, have quadrupled. Jim has also volunteered with them as well. But Megan was in marketing. She doesn't know anything about HR, nonprofit governance, contract formation, waivers of liability, what to do with volunteers, what to do with employees who want to volunteer. Intellectual property is something that we've done a lot of work on for them. I think we've done probably about 25 or 30 different projects with Sweet Cheeks Diaper Bank. So we have 200 clients. These are just a few up there. Some you'll recognize, some you won't. Again, I welcome the chance to go to coffee with any of you and talk with you about the work that we're doing and how we can really meaningfully engage you in our work. So, hallmarks of volunteering with us, and I'm going to let Jim take it from here. Talk a little bit about your experience volunteering with us, any words of wisdom, many words of wisdom.
The notion that you can pick not only the client, but more importantly, the subject matter that you have some expertise in was very valuable to me, because if it weren't labor and employment, I know nothing about other areas of the law. But each month there were always 3 to 5 or 6 different opportunities. In my case, determining whether an employee was exempt or not exempt, drafting an independent contractor agreement, maybe drafting an arbitration agreement, dealing with minimum wage, overtime issues, reviewing an employee handbook, and asking questions about it, all of which were in areas that obviously I knew something about. If there were an area I didn't know anything about, or as Erin just indicated, the client was indicated one area, but it morphed into other areas, I was able either to find an attorney at Frost Brown Todd who could give me some assistance, or I would call Pro Bono Partners and say, we need some additional help in this area, and then they would take over in contact with one of you who had an expertise in that area. That made me feel very comfortable. What if I interacted with a client that I didn't like, we weren't getting along? Obviously, I would finish that matter, but because of the protocol of Pro Bono Partners, each separate contact request for counsel is handled through Pro Bono Partners. So I could certainly indicate I prefer not working again with ABC, and I wouldn't need to. And if they were to call, Erin would, or one of her colleagues would, arrange for some other attorney to do the work for ABC. To the contrary, if I really enjoyed working with the client, turned out to be 100% of the cases, but if I really enjoyed working with the client, I would certainly let Erin or one of her colleagues know that, so that if they called and needed advice in labor and employment areas and said, can we work with Jim again, she would call and we would develop that ongoing relationship. But each separate request for counsel is handled through Pro Bono Partners, so I am not having to make a decision, I'm not going to work with you again, or not in a position where they're calling me over and over again. Each call has to go through Pro Bono Partners. Sometimes it's very, very quickly handled, but that's a comfort to know. You're going on vacation for a couple of months. Obviously, you're not selecting from the monthly email of other opportunities that are available. If you're going on vacation quickly, maybe then calling Pro Bono Partners and saying, I'm planning to go to Israel. and it's next week, and I'm right in the middle of a project, and I think there's some urgency on the part of the client to get this resolved. So pro bono partners would step in and arrange for help in my absence. It's such a cooperative, collaborative environment that you are never in a position where you're stuck, either with a matter that you can't handle or with a client that you're uncomfortable with. And you'll get to know them quite well. With Anthony Munoz Foundation, I was invited to one of their get-togethers with the various people who assist them, and that was a very enjoyable experience. I could ramble on, but Erin and I would prefer to respond to questions or concerns that you may have. Generally, when you're writing an opinion letter or responding to an email, I blind copy pro bono partners so that they're aware of the fact that there is an ongoing relationship and that things are being done. Whether that happens or not, Barca will send a reminder to the client and to you. Have you had a contact with ABC recently? Are you waiting for some information from them? So that pro bono partners is aware if there has been a contact made but no work being done, so that they can either inquire if there's a problem or close out that matter because the work has been completed, but maybe there were no emails or opinion letters sent by me, so that Barker isn't aware, your staff isn't aware that simply by phone calls. I would say 90% of my work is done over the phone and by email. But I have had some opportunities where I've had lunch with the client, gone out to their place of business, and that's been a good experience for me as well. I became very sensitive, particularly in the labor employment area, that some statutes simply didn't apply to the client because of their volume of business done was very low in dollars. They may have hundreds of thousands of dollars in contribution, but very little business done. They're not selling t-shirts. They're not providing counsel for remuneration. So you need to be sensitive as to whether statutes that may involve clients that you've worked with in the years you were practicing apply to these small nonprofits. And the other things that you become sensitive to as you have contacts.
Just to pick up,
Oh, I'm sorry.
How many hours a week do you spend?
Jim took 40 projects just last year, so he volunteers a lot more than the average nonprofit or average attorney.
I'm sorry, how many hours a week was the question do I spend? I would say 4 to 6 hours a week, sometimes maybe as many as 10 hours a week, but rarely more than that. 4 to 6 is the norm, and it's clear that I'm a glutton. So many folks have a client or two, and they're spending an hour or maybe 2 hours a week. But it's totally up to you as to how many clients you care to have. I'm usually juggling 4 or 5 at the same time, but many people have one providing good service for them, and rarely is there a rush where you have to get something done tomorrow. It's rarely that case. I've already described some of the things I've done. The likelihood of these small nonprofits having a Department of Labor investigation on their overtime practices hovers right around 0. So they want to do it what's right. And obviously I advise them on what's right to do, but they're not concerned that they're about to have a wage hour investigation. They're more concerned about Microsoft than they are about a small for profit. But it's very much in your control. And where, as I said, you're going on vacation or you have family obligations, you can decline the monthly newsletter for a month or 2 or 3, totally up to you.
Our average project is 6 hours. So when you sign up for a project, you're just signing up for one discrete project. Sorry, I'll yell, I think it keeps cutting out. So, you know, if the same nonprofit may show up on our list 3 or 4 times, but we're going to ask you just to jump in and volunteer for that one matter in your area of expertise. So when we averaged out all the time from last year, the average project was 6 hours. Many, especially in the area of labor and employment, all they need is a phone call. We did 3 different mergers of nonprofits last year. Obviously, that's a much bigger investment of time, but the attorneys that volunteered for that, Taft actually took, I think, 2 of the mergers. They used it as a training ground to train their attorneys on mergers, and those were a lot more. But your average project is just jump in, jump out, and hopefully jump back in. Jim was the winner of our individual attorney of the year last year for all of his volunteering. He's been with us about 1.5 years as a volunteer, less than 2. He's volunteered for 40 projects, 40 separate projects. He by far and away exceeds what all of our other volunteers have done, and we are so grateful for the time that he spends with our client. They love him. He has so many, not only just a great ground of expertise that he has cultivated over many years, but you really take the time to get to know them and positively impact their organization.
I'm sorry I gave you a hypothetical. If I were in your shoes, I wouldn't hypotheticals. Let me give you a real example. I was doing an employment matter for a client, and it got into a workers' compensation claim. So does that become litigation, which is something Pro Bono Partners doesn't do, or is it an administrative? Turned out we decided it was not litigation because it was simply a administrative hearing at that point. But I'm not any longer a workers' compensation specialist by any means, so I sought help from a colleague who is very familiar with the handling of the internal claims to give me some guidance as to what to do. But if you're no longer connected or will be no longer connected with your former firm, that's when you call Pro Bono Partners and say, this issue has morphed into an administrative hearing. They'll say, fine, we'll look into it, get back to you. And it's that simple. So you're not put in a position where you have to go to Google to figure out what's an Ohio administrative hearing before the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. And so often what they're seeking is your judgment, not what is the law, but what is your judgment. So I'm just making up an example. We want to have an anti-nepotism policy. I would say, fine, I'll be glad to draft one for you. Are you sure your organization, which has 6 employees, needs an anti-nepotism policy? And if someone has a spouse that wants to help out, do you want to exclude them because you have an anti-nepotism policy? So I am giving them the advice that while I can draft it and I can put it in your handbook, it may not be anything that you need, and I would give them some suggestions that if there is a supervisory subordinate relationship, you should not have the husband and wife in that relationship. But I'm talking to them about the 50 years I was practicing, not saying, sure, I'll draft one for you, when not only is it unnecessary, but it's probably silly for an organization that small to be concerned about that kind of an issue.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, you said you, under before you had something called support. You had other resources. What are the other resources?
Yes. So as I said before, it's not just myself as an attorney on staff, but we have 2 other attorneys, a paralegal and a program coordinator. So we have model documents and resources available. When you get our monthly volunteer opportunity, there will be a little asterisk saying PBPO has resources, because a lot of these things are done over and over and over again. So if someone needs a waiver for an event, we can send you 3 sample waivers, and the value to the client is in you learning a little bit more about the event, who the participants are, whether there's minors involved, and then drafting it. So, and if it's something that we've never seen, we can reach out to the other pro bono partnerships. Also, which may be of interest to you, is that you all are covered by our liability insurance, our malpractice insurance, and you can get Ohio COLE for volunteering with us, which is similar to many other approved pro bono organizations. So really quickly, the Supreme Court passed the Ohio Emeritus Rule, and that is something for attorneys who've been in practice for over 15 years and are in good standing. It reduces your registration fee to $75 per biennium, and then your license is only extended to approved pro bono organizations. So if you want to keep, of which we are one, the CLE requirements are the same, but it's a great way for you to stay active. You can get CLE for volunteering with a lot of these approved organizations. So the Bar Association here is one, Legal Aid, the Ohio Justice and Policy Center, the Ohio Military and Veterans Legal Assistance Project, Ohio Invents, which does intellectual property work, Pro Seniors with Dimity in the back, and the UC College of Law. So that emeritus status applies to all of these organizations and more. So they have to cover your malpractice insurance and are able to give you CLE credit for your volunteer work. And Jim is an emeritus attorney, correct?
Yes, so I took advantage of that, and obviously it's much less expensive, and the only work I'm doing is for pro bono partners. Now, our firm has an internal arrangement with its insurance carrier that I can do up to 50 hours a year of work within the firm and still have coverage. The firm will have coverage naming me as long as it doesn't exceed 50 hours. But that's not the important piece. What Erin has given you is the important piece, that you have coverage through pro bono partners for the advice and counsel you provide.
We also have created a seasoned counselor group. If anyone is interested, it's for people who volunteer with us or want to learn a little bit more. We have a luncheon coming up. I brought invitations today. And we bring a client in to talk about the work that they're doing in the community and how we've helped them. We also, our law firm partners, have us pass on their free CLE that they do every year. So if you just want to volunteer for approved pro bono organizations and are worried about paying for CLE or getting CLE, we'll absolutely make that possible. So our vision is community empowered and enhanced by thriving nonprofits like Sweet Cheeks Staper Bank and engaged attorney volunteers. We need your help. We always have more projects than we do volunteer attorneys, and with the years of expertise collectively in this room, we could make a huge positive impact on Cincinnati. Is there one more question?
Where does your funding come from?
Great question. Our funding comes from companies, law firms, and foundations. So no public money, no, and individual donors. Any other questions? I'll be here in the back. I have lots of informational brochures, but again, I welcome the chance to meet with you or talk with you over the phone. We would really love to engage you in our work, and thank you, Jim, for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. This is the end of our 5-seminar presentation.